All right, so now that we have completed cutting our chicken apart into its various elements, we are going to pan fry the chicken. So let me just show you what I've got set up. So I've got a set of tongs so that I'll be able to move the chicken around in the pan safely. I've got thermometers. I've got a bimetal thermometer. For the chicken breast, which does not have the bone, we're going to want to get to 165. I also have these two smaller thermometers, which give us the right range for chicken. For the pieces with the bone in, like the thigh and the leg, we're going to want to get to 170. So I have 3 pieces of the chicken that we've cut up. I've got a chicken leg, a chicken thigh, and a chicken breast. I have butterflied the chicken breast just to reduce the thickness so it'll cook a little more evenly and not dry out, and also it creates more portions. I also have a cup of buttermilk, which we will be soaking our chicken in before we dredge it in the flour mixture. Here I've got 2 cups of flour. I've got salt and pepper. I have a teaspoon of basil, a teaspoon of oregano, 2 teaspoons of onion powder, and 2 teaspoons of garlic, which is what our recipe calls for. Now, depending upon where you live, other people may add things like paprika or additional salt. It really, depending upon the taste, what you like to include in your flour mixture. But this is what the recipe called for, so this is what we have today. I also have vegetable oil because we'll be pan frying. And people ask, well, how much vegetable oil do I need? You want to go about 1/4 of the thickness of the piece that you're frying. So the biggest piece that we're frying here in terms of thickness is probably the leg. So I would estimate about 1/4 of an inch up the pan is what we're going to do. Okay, so I also have over here, I have the lid for the pan just in case we have an issue with a grease fire. So if this suddenly catches fire or it gets too hot, we put the lid on and that'll quell it. If it gets completely out of control, I do have a fire extinguisher here that's rated for grease fires, so I'm prepared for that. Once the chicken is done, we will be removing it and placing it on a drainage plate. That's what I have here. You see the drains. And I have a paper towel over the top to get some of the additional grease off. And then once it's sat here for a few minutes, I have a container to put it in with a lid to keep it warm while the other pieces actually continue to cook. Okay, so we're going to get started. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to turn our pan on to medium-high heat so that it can warm through while we're staging our ingredients. Alright, so first we're going to pour our buttermilk in this dish for dredging. Now if you don't have buttermilk, you can use regular milk and add 1 tablespoon of lemon juice to it, and that will be an effective substitute for buttermilk if you let it sit for 10 minutes at room temperature. Alright, so we're going to add our ingredients. Here's our basil. We're also going to add some oregano. We're going to add our onion powder. We're going to add our garlic. We're going to add salt. Now, if you're not sure how much salt comes out, a lot of times I like to do this. You can add salt, put it in your hands, and then you can kind of see, you know, for your particular salt shaker, how much is coming out. I want a fair amount of salt. And some pepper. Okay, this is black pepper. If you have a pepper mill, you could also use that. With various types of peppercorns, whichever ones you like. Okay, once we get all our ingredients in there, we're just going to hand mix these together with the flour. Kind of try to evenly distribute them to the best of our ability. Okay, that looks good. Alright, our pan is warming up. I want it to get a little bit warmer. Okay, it is warm to the touch. So I'm going to go ahead and add my oil. I think that I'll grab a paper towel here. Just some of these dry ingredients off my fingers. Okay, so add some oil to the pan. And as I mentioned, about 1/4 inch. Certainly enough to cover the bottom. Okay, that needs to heat up before we put the chicken in. And I'll show you a little trick in a minute about how to make sure that it's hot enough. Okay, so while that's heating, we'll go ahead and grab our chicken pieces and start putting them in the buttermilk. Okay, covered in buttermilk. That's good. Okay, we're going to stick them in here and make sure they get sort of fully covered. This is what's going to make that nice crunchy coating on the chicken. All right, so that's one piece that's ready. All right, this is our chicken thigh. Cover it in buttermilk. Okay. Make sure that we've got good coating on there. All right. And one more piece. This is our chicken breast. Again, in the buttermilk, flip it over, and we're going to put it here in the flour. Now I'm just staging these other pieces in the dredging dish here while I'm waiting for the oil to get to the right temperature. I can see it, the oil is kind of starting to bubble a bit. You get sort of a wavy appearance at the top. The way I know that the oil is ready is I take a little bit of flour, and it should sizzle when you put it in there. That's not quite the sizzle that I'm hoping for. So while it's getting just a little bit warmer, I'm just going to rinse some of this mixture off my fingers. That should give it enough time to heat up. Alright. And I'm sort of watching the oil as I'm washing my hands here. Okay, that looks like it's getting ready. Test it one more time, and then I think we'll be ready to put our chicken in. Still not quite hot enough. I'm going to turn it up just a little bit. Now, question while we're waiting for it to heat just a little bit more, how long do we cook these? The breast, which does not have a bone in it, we're going to cook approximately 6 to 8 minutes on each side, depending upon the heat and whatever else is in the pan. You're certainly going to want to use your thermometers to make sure that you're at the right temperature. As I said before, we're going to make sure that it gets to 165 before we take it out. But again, 6 to 8 minutes on one side, and then flip it over to the other side. You'll notice that it gets a nice brown, crusty appearance, and you'll also notice on the very edges the meat that's exposed will begin to turn white, and that's how you'll know that it's ready to flip. Now for these pieces with the bones in, like the leg and the thigh, they will take 10 to 12 minutes per side, especially the leg, which is much thicker. And you're going to want to make sure before you take them out that they get to 170. Now just one tip on this bimetal thermometer, it takes about this much depth of thermometer to get the correct temperature, so you almost have to run it in at an angle to make sure that you get the correct temperature. That's why I like these smaller thermometers, because you can stick them into the meat about half depth, which is required, and they're still straight up. All right, so I believe it's ready. So at this point, I'm going to take our chicken. And put a piece there. I'm going to put the thickest piece in the middle. That's the hottest part of the pan. I'm going to put skin side down. Oops, I got a little bit extra. It looks like I need to turn the temperature down just a bit. So turn it down to medium-high. And again, skin side down on both the breast and the thigh. And as I mentioned, we're going to be cooking the breast approximately 6 to 8 minutes on this side, and then we'll flip it for the thigh and the drumstick 10 to 12 minutes. And then we'll cook an additional 10 to 12 minutes and measure for heat before we take it out. All right, we're going to pause the video at this point, and I'll be speaking to you again when we're ready to remove the chicken from the pan.